You smell the iron before you see it, the scent of blood threading through incense and roses. You stand where marble gleams like bone under the trembling light of oil lamps, and in the silence after her final breath, the world itself seems to kneel. You are not emperor or god here, only a man who has killed the woman he cannot stop loving. Before we step deeper into this echoing tragedy of power and desire, take a moment to breathe with us. If you're watching from Rome or Rio, from Delhi or Dublin, let us know below. Isn't it extraordinary, this gathering of souls across centuries and screens, people from every corner of the earth witnessing the same flicker of history reborn? Like, subscribe, and join the empire of storytellers who refuse to let the past stay silent. Now, the lamps burn low in the Palatine Palace. The summer of AD 65 clings to the air, heavy and perfumed with the scent of crushed myrrh. Nero Claudius Caesar, 27 years old, kneels beside the body of Poppaea Sabina. Her hair, golden as ripened wheat, fans across the marble like spilled sunlight gone cold. The emperor's hands tremble, hands that once signed decrees, now smeared with her blood. "Awake," he whispers, "Poppaea, awake." But there is no sound save the slow drip of oil from the lamps and the faint rhythmic beat of the fountains beyond the corridor. The empire has gone quiet. Even the guards outside the chamber avert their eyes, unsure whether to fear their emperor or pity him. She had angered him, they say. Perhaps a careless word, perhaps her pleading for a slave's life. Perhaps it was only that Nero had grown tired of her gaze, too sharp, too knowing. In rage he struck her down, but now that her chest lies still, he finds no peace in silence. The palace physicians stand motionless. No one dares speak. It is Seneca's philosophy inverted, the god-king consumed by his own passions. Nero presses his ear to her lips, as if willing air back into them. For an instant the room seems to spin, time folding upon itself like the drapery of her fallen gown. "Fetch her perfumes," Nero commands suddenly. "Her jewels. Dress her as she was. No, finer. She shall not enter the next world in disarray." Slaves rush to obey. They drape her in silks from Alexandria, pearls from the Red Sea, and a crown of jasmine so sweet it almost masks the scent of death. Nero watches, eyes gleaming with something unhinged, something dangerously divine. "Build her a temple," he mutters. "She was Venus, and Venus does not die." And so begins Rome's descent, not in fire but in mourning. The emperor orders her body embalmed, forbidden to decay. He decrees her deification. Statues rise in her likeness, carved from alabaster so lifelike they seem to breathe. Across the empire, incense burns for the ghost of Poppaea, and the line between worship and madness blurs. Was it grief or guilt that drove him? Historians still ask. But grief, in Rome, was never private. It became law, spectacle, theater. Nero's sorrow turned imperial, his obsession contagious. Senators bowed before her image. Poets compared her eyes to dawn over the Tiber. No one dared question the sanctity of a ghost. At night, the emperor wanders the gardens of the Domus Aurea, the golden house he built as both palace and tomb. He claims to hear her voice in the fountains, her laughter in the rustling of laurel leaves. Servants whisper that he calls her name before sleep, and when he cannot find rest. He commands musicians to play as if she still sat beside him. "Bring me her scent," he once said, eyes hollow. "If I breathe her perfume, she will return." Even as rebellion brews in distant provinces, Nero dreams only of her return. He orders a young boy, Sporus, delicate and beautiful, to be dressed in Poppaea's garments and to speak with her voice. He marries the boy in a mock ceremony, naming him empress. The court pretends not to notice. Rome pretends not to tremble. The empire becomes an echo chamber of his grief. Temples rise not to gods but to ghosts. Decrees are issued in moments of delusion. And through it all, Nero's music grows softer, stranger, songs that weep, not conquer. Can a god love too much? Or does the act of worship itself demand sacrifice? Outside, the city still smells faintly of smoke from the fires he swore he did not start. The people whisper that the emperor's madness is the empire's own reflection, that power, like grief, has no limit until it consumes the world that feeds it. One night he returns to her shrine alone. The marble statue of Poppaea glows in the lamplight, her carved lips parted in eternal calm. Nero kneels again, as he did that night months before, and for a moment the ghost of his love seems to stir. The shadows tremble on the walls, the fountains hiss like whispered prayers. "Are you still mine?" he asks the silence. And somewhere, deep within the marble, a drop of water falls, soft as breath, sharp as prophecy. The emperor looks up, eyes wet as if expecting an answer. None comes. Only the sound of footsteps approaching, measured, deliberate, carrying the weight of conspiracy through the corridors of the doomed. The room is lit by a dozen lamps, their flames bending as if in fear. The air smells of honey, oil, and iron. The alchemy of empire, where flesh is made to serve a god's desire. In the deepest chamber of the Palatine, time itself seems to hold its breath. Outside, Rome still believes in its emperor's divinity. Inside, a boy is being remade into a ghost. They call him Sporus. Once he was a freedman, light of foot and soft of voice, prized for his beauty and obedience. Now he stands before the physicians like an offering on an altar. His wrists tremble, but his face remains still, marble before the chisel. The emperor has decreed it. Sporus must become what Nero has lost. The physicians, Greek, Syrian, Roman, exchange glances heavy with dread. They have healed wounds, birthed heirs, cured fevers. But this is not healing. This is transformation born of madness. They whisper a prayer to Asclepius, god of medicine, though none believes he listens anymore. In the shadows, Nero watches. His eyes, ringed with sleeplessness, shine with feverish conviction. "She will return," he murmurs. "Venus herself will rise again through him." The command had been given weeks before. The court had whispered of it in terror, that the emperor would not let Poppaea rest, that his grief had grown teeth. When no omen or oracle could summon her, he turned instead to artifice. If death had taken his empress, he would make another. The boy is stripped of his tunic. The cold of the marble slab bites through his skin. The physicians prepare their instruments, small knives of bronze and obsidian, cloths soaked in wine. The scent of myrrh mingles with blood. There are no screams. Sporus has been given poppy to drink, enough to cloud the world but not erase it. One physician falters. "Domine, the gods will—" "The gods," Nero interrupts, his voice smooth as poured oil. "I am their voice. Continue." And they do. The ritual unfolds with precision, grotesque and sacred. Outside, music plays softly, lyres and flutes, a hymn once sung to Venus Genitrix. Inside, flesh is silenced and remade. When it is done, the boy is wrapped in linen and left to sleep beneath the scent of burning cedar. Days later, he wakes. The chamber is draped in silks the color of dawn. Slaves move like shadows, bringing bowls of milk and powdered pearls for his skin. Mirrors, polished bronze, are placed before him. He does not recognize the face that stares back. It is neither man nor woman, but something perfected and hollow. Nero enters. His tunic is white, his laurel wreath glinting with emerald. For a moment he seems almost gentle. "You are beautiful," he says, voice trembling between worship and guilt. "You are my Poppaea." Sporus lowers his eyes. "I am what you command, Caesar." "Not command," Nero whispers. "Anointed." From that day forward, the court plays its part in the emperor's delusion. Sporus is dressed in Poppaea's gowns, taught her gestures, her tone, her smile. He is perfumed with her oils, nard, saffron, and rosewater. Even the senators bow to him, careful to use her name when the emperor listens. Rome becomes theater. Every banquet is a resurrection, every song an invocation. Nero leads Sporus through the streets in a golden litter, the people watching in silence as the emperor's bride passes by, a ghost draped in silk, a living echo of the dead. At night, the palace walls hum with whispers. Some say Nero sleeps beside him, murmuring the old vows he once spoke to Poppaea. Others claim he speaks to her ghost through Sporus's lips, as though the boy's breath could conjure eternity. None dare confirm it. Beauty itself becomes a weapon of empire. The rituals of adornment, kohl on the eyes, cinnabar on the cheeks, pearls woven into hair, are performed with the precision of sacrifice. Every touch is both tenderness and cruelty. Sporus, once a person, is now a performance. But what does it mean to live as a reflection? To be loved not for the soul within, but for the shadow one casts. The question lingers beneath the perfume and ceremony. When Sporus smiles, does he remember himself, or only the woman whose ghost he carries? One evening, during a feast in the Domus Aurea, Nero commands that a mock wedding be held. The emperor in bridal robes, the boy in white veils. Senators look on, wine trembling in their cups. The ceremony is solemn, obscene, sacred. When Nero places the ring upon Sporus's finger, the crowd erupts in forced applause. Rome, once ruled by reason and law, now bows to delusion. "Behold," Nero declares, "my empress reborn." The musicians play, the torches flicker, and Sporus, beneath his veil, feels tears sting his eyes, not for love, but for what has been taken. Outside, thunder gathers over the Tiber. The air tastes of rain and omen. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, a conspiracy is whispering its first breath. But within, the emperor smiles, cradling his living doll as if the world has been remade, and in the silence after the music ends, a single drop of blood falls from Sporus's sleeve, proof that even gods cannot erase what they destroy. The cell is cold. Stone sweats beneath torchlight, and iron sings softly with the wind from the Tiber. Sporus sits in shadow, a thin figure wrapped in the silence of Rome's forgotten hours. The name Empress still echoes down the corridors of memory, mocking, unreal, a title bound to chains. Once he stood beside Nero, the boy who became a ghost of an emperor's delusion. Now he waits for dawn, and with it the empire's final demand. After Nero's suicide, Rome did not mourn. It convulsed. Armies marched beneath hastily painted standards, declaring their generals the next Augustus. Otho, Vitellius, Vespasian. Each one promised restoration. Each one spilled the blood of the last. The city burned and feasted and burned again, a creature gnawing at its own limbs. And in that feverish game of thrones, Sporus became an object of inheritance, passed from tyrant to tyrant, a strange token of the fallen god they had overthrown. It was Otho who took him first. The same Otho who had once shared Nero's bed, and who now wore his perfumes, his tunics, his hunger for beauty. When the guards brought Sporus before him, the chamber was thick with incense and echoes of the past. "Do you know who I am?" Otho asked, reclining upon cushions once meant for Nero himself. Sporus bowed, his voice low, calm. "You are Rome's master, for now." Otho laughed, not cruelly, but with the weary mirth of a man chasing ghosts. "And you are Rome's wound. Do you hate him still, or do you miss him?" Sporus said nothing. His silence was a blade sharper than any insult. For months, Otho paraded him as a relic of Nero's dream, dressing him again in silk, placing jewels upon his throat. The crowds whispered, "Nero's bride returns." But Sporus did not smile. Each silk thread was a memory, each gem a shackle polished bright, And when Otho fell, his own suicide a mirror to Nero's, the boy's chains were simply carried to another master. Vitellius came next, coarse and brutal, a man who saw in Sporus not beauty but spectacle. To Vitellius, Rome's grief was theater, and every actor was replaceable. He ordered Sporus to appear at a festival stage to mock the fallen Nero, a grotesque pageant where the boy would reenact his own wedding, dragged before the mob dressed once again as an empress. When the news reached him, Sporus asked for an hour alone. The guards allowed it, curious. Inside his chamber, he traced the patterns on the marble floor, the faint veins of gold running through white stone. He thought of the Palatine, of laughter gilded by cruelty, of hands that crowned him only to claim him. Outside, the city roared, a voice made of 10,000 hungry throats. He could still hear Nero's words, soft and fevered on that long-ago night. "You will be eternal, Sporus. They will never forget you." Eternal, yes, but not as a man. He touched the small bronze mirror that lay beside the bed. In it, his reflection trembled with torchlight, the face of someone shaped to please an empire and damned for it. He thought of what they would make of him tomorrow. Mockery draped in memory, the ghost of a dead god's fantasy. And he understood then that the only rebellion left was to deny them their stage. The blade was small, hidden in the folds of his robe. When they came for him, he met their eyes without fear. "I will not be your laughter," he said simply. By dawn, it was done. Word of his death spread through Rome like the echo of a forgotten hymn. Vitellius cursed the loss of his performance, calling it waste of a fine jest. The city moved on, as it always did, trampling over the stories that did not serve its grandeur. But beneath the noise, something shifted. The people had begun to wonder. If the gods allowed such things, emperors who played at divinity, and boys who died to preserve their dignity, then what justice did Rome truly serve? Years later, under Vespasian's rule, the empire would scrub Nero's memory from its monuments, chiseling away his name, purging his likeness from coin and statue alike. Yet in secret corners, among those who had seen too much, whispers persisted. They spoke of the boy who had once been crowned an empress, who had walked beside madness itself, and who had chosen death not as surrender, but as defiance. History, like Rome, prefers victors. But Sporus left behind no lineage, no temple, no heirs to gild his story. Only the faintest tremor of pity in the writings of Suetonius and Cassius Dio, men who could not comprehend what it meant to live as someone's illusion. They called him the eunuch who died rather than face shame. Yet beneath their disdain lingers a kind of awe, that even in the pit of Rome's cruelty, a silenced life could end in a whisper of sovereignty. In the cell where he fell, torchlight burned low. The air smelled of metal and dust, and the sound of footsteps faded into the great silence of empire. Perhaps the gods watched. Perhaps they turned away. But in that moment, Sporus became what Nero never could: free. The empire would outlive them all. It would raise new idols, new Caesars, new myths to justify its hunger. But beneath the marble and triumph, the memory of one quiet act would endure. A boy, once crowned against his will, choosing instead to crown himself with death. The story does not end with glory. It ends with a question. What is Rome, if not the theater of human cruelty, an empire that demanded gods and created ghosts? Some say Sporus's spirit still walks the corridors of the Palatine at night, silent, watching, not seeking vengeance, but remembrance, and in that remembrance lies his final defiance.